the Baruch Omer. So, so we were looking at the Aruch HaShulchan yesterday. Let me just let's see, Reish Nun be around here. 60 to 61. So I want to make a PDF. Let's see. Okay, so at least now we have it. I'll send it out later. But in the meantime, we were looking at the Aruch HaShulchan yesterday to sort of understand the parameters of canceling a job. Okay, so I'd like to just briefly go back to that. Let me just see. No, not that. Restart. Sorry to keep you waiting. So with Siman Shin Lamed Gimel Sheleg that we had started yesterday. Okay, let me share the screen. There we go. All right. So, hasocheres hapoalim va'adayin lo hitchilu b'melacha klal. If a person hires workers, this is the Aruch HaShulchan, okay? And if a person hires workers and they haven't started the job at all, ezemehem shabalachzor harishus biyado, whichever one wishes to withdraw from the contract has a right to do so. Either side can cancel the job. Because the balabais can always say to the worker, well, just hire yourself out somewhere else. And the worker can say, well, just hire some other worker. The only thing is that there's a legitimate grievance that the person who has been canceled upon is going to have to try and find someone else to replace the guy who canceled. And as the Shach says, and we saw this quoted by Rav Sharaga, by the Makor Baruch, even so in a case where it's extremely easy to find additional work, or it's extremely easy to find additional workers, so then even a grievance you can't have. V'nafkamina le'inyan masha kosav b'simin shin lamed bez, v'yesh misha omer shedin chazar zu kedin chazaras mekach bidvar. So he says that there are those who say that now what is written in Simin Shin Lamed Beis Sif Tezayin. So that's really something that we should take a look. It's right here. The Aruch HaShulchan writes as follows: V'im dibru beferish lahafchit o lahosif, if there was negotiation to either lower or increase the wages. Kegon shehukra hamalacha va'amru hapoalim lo nasa b'li hosaf v'kach v'kach. Let's say the workers are in the middle of a job, or they're starting a new job, and they had already agreed upon a wage, but they say we can't work for that small amount because costs have gone up, wages have gone up, etc. Upiyasam habalabayas, and the balabayas is able to appease them. Afilu lo omer lahem hineni mosif lachem, ela omer lechu asu melachtechem tzarich lahosif lahem. As long as the employer says, go and just do the job, even if he hasn't explicitly agreed to add to their wages, he is obligated. He's obligated to pay them. Now, I'm not sure if this is what the Aruch HaShulchan is referring to here. Let me just see if he was referring to the Aruch HaShulchan or the Shulchan Aruch itself. So let's take a look. So the Shulchan Aruch itself in Choshen Mishpat Reish Lamed Beis or Shin Lamed Beis. Shin Lamed Beis. Yeah, no, it has to. Yeah, he has to be referring to what he himself wrote. Okay. Now, yeah, this is the right paragraph. Now, he says, even if it is so, okay. Then he will have to increase their wages. This is not only true if it's before they start working, even if they've already started working, and then after one day work, they say, listen, it's what you've offered us for this job is not sufficient. We didn't realize the scope of the work. And the Balabayas just nods his head and says, just do the work. We'll work it out. He says, it doesn't matter because every day a worker can say, I'm working for you by the day, and therefore I can stop working at any time. And therefore, if by them stopping the work, let's say they're doing a job, they're building an additional room to my house, and they stop in the middle after the demolition, and they say, we can't do it for the price that we quoted for you. So that's something that they're not allowed to interrupt in the middle. And therefore, their statement is null and void. Unless he says explicitly, I will add on X amount of dollars for you. V'imhuzala hamalacha, v'amar abalabayis ein ritzoni shetasu elam kein tivchusu li me'amekach kach v'kach. And if for whatever reason the job has gone down in value, and the balabayis wants to renegotiate in the middle of the job, and he says to them, I'm only willing to pay you X instead of Y that I originally promised you, if they just appease him and say, don't worry, we'll work it out, and they don't specifically negotiate the reduced amount, in kfar hischilu hamalacha ein bidvar of klum, if they've already started the job, he doesn't have a right to renegotiate, because he's not allowed to retract once the work has started. He says the only thing is that you have a grievance, as we'll explain in the next chapter. Let me just see. Okay, all he's really bringing from this previous chapter in the Aruch HaShulchan is that when we say all you have is a grievance, there is no actionable offense, even though I have to now burden myself to go find extra work. He says, but I can't sue you for that. Now we're just continuing in our simon. He says, "V'yesh mi sha'omer shedin chazara zu kedin chazaras mekach b'dvarim shebesimin reish daled she'achozer bo ein ruach chachamim noicha heimenu." He says, some say that when you cancel a job, whether you're the employee or the employer, we would say that's the same thing as canceling any verbal contract, which is that is to say that the Ruach Chachamim is not nocheimenu. The Chachamim are unhappy with you. V'hu mimechusare amana, and you are acting in bad faith. Ulamisha sover sham da'afilu kishenishtana hamekach mikri mechusar amana. And remember, if you recall from the Imre Yaakov, what we learned then is that if a person is a mechusar amana acting in bad faith, you can call them a rasha to their face. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you can take them to Beis Din, but they are acting in an evil way, okay? So, and that's true even if there's been a price fluctuation. So the Sma is of the opinion that a person who acts in bad faith is acting in bad faith if he cancels his workers, even if the price of workers has gone down. Mihu im balabayis lo hutzrach la'malacha lefi ma shenischadesh achar kach ba'asakav. However, let's say a new circumstance arises. I thought I was going to need these workers for today, and lo and behold, I discover on the morning of the job that this job, it would be a terrible thing if I went ahead with it. Or he discovers that these are not the professionals that I need. They don't have the skilled knowledge that is necessary to do this job properly. Nira de'ein lahapoil el alav tarumos ve'eno nikra mechusar amana. Then the employer, the guy who's doing the hiring, is not mechusar amana, because the circumstances have changed to the point where he would not at all benefit from the job. And similarly, if the worker, the singular worker, the workers, plural, if they discover that there's some new circumstance that has arisen that would cause them to lose money, or perhaps even if they have a new enterprise, then they're not called the mechusar amana. But again, it depends on the circumstance. So this all we saw yesterday at the end of the shir, that the Aruch HaShulchan makes this sweeping statement. And as I mentioned at the time yesterday, I'm not so sure that it's so easy to make this across-the-board statement, right? Because what if an employee cancels a job because someone offered to pay him an extra $1 an hour? Right. You know, and is that a legitimate enough reason to cancel on one person who's been really reliant on that employee to come and do the job? That doesn't seem to be fair.
If they found out
Yes,
more about the job that they were hired for, then I can understand. But if it's just they got a better
right,
offer.
right. So when he says, well, if circumstances change, that's a legitimate reason to cancel. You have to really be more specific in what you mean when you say circumstances change. And yeah,
Is this just about a verbal contract?
Yeah.
It's only about a verbal contract.
it's about a verbal contract. If there's a written contract, it would seem that a written contract would supersede everything that we're saying, although he hasn't said that explicitly. But I can't imagine, in other words, let's say I enter into a contract with someone. They can certainly, the person who is in breach of contract can certainly, even if you can't coerce them to do the job, but you can certainly sue for damages, it would seem. Because once you enter into a written contract, you're demonstrating a certain level of reliance on the employee. And even if you could argue, well, why can't you just find someone else to do the job? The answer could be, well, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars in order to be able to find a person and to draw up a new contract, yada, yada, yada. Training, whatever it's going to take.
Is verbal different than a written contract?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Your word is not your bond, but
your word is your bond. However, it's not actionable and based on if there was no kinyan made. The issue is kinyan. The issue is that you commit yourself to a transaction by making a kinyan. The signing of a shtar is one method of kinyan. It's not the only method of kinyan. So, for example, if you and I make a kinyan chalipin, where I take an object of yours, so I've committed myself by taking an object of yours, your pen, whatever, your key, and I lift it up and I make it mine even momentarily, then I've committed myself to a job. And that also could constitute a breach of contract. So,
so what about Rabbi, if in the case of the babysitter, let's say she was going to look after the child for most of the day. Let's say she'd gone out and bought some toys to play with the child. Could she claim that? Now,
I don't know if she could make a claim that she bought toys because she was not contracted for that purpose. However, it would be probably advisable because this does happen, that if a person is hired for a job and she understands that anyone could theoretically cancel at any time before she starts, she should say in advance, I want you to know that there is a cancellation fee. So in the event that you cancel before I start the babysitting job, I will have to charge you if it's within 24 hours. Yeah, I think 24 hours is legit. If it's within 24 hours of the job, I'm going to have to charge you for the evening that you've asked me to babysit or the day, because I don't have within 24 hours. It's too little time for me to find something else.
Doctors are doing that also for appointments.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, until 6 o'clock the night, 6 p.m. the night before. And also target charge of what they charge for at least one day.
That's right.
Administration fee or something. Yeah.
So
restaurants you show up to restaurants do that too.
yeah,
If they've got your credit card.
that's right. It's interesting that certain sometimes car rentals do require credit cards, but the standard is that car rental companies do not require credit cards to make reservations, usually because they have an abundance of cars. But anyway,
you also don't show up.
The who will?
A hotel.
The hotel, yeah. Anyway, Zeshin Isboyer Shein Lahem Ze Al Ze Elatar Umos. He says, now we have to qualify this. When do we say that all they have are a grievance upon the other party? Is She'ein lahem hefsed al yedei hachazara el hatarach ba'alma. That's when there's no financial loss incurred through the cancellation. All there is the burden, the bother of having to find another job. Aval kishiyesh hefsed. But when there is a financial loss, kagon shesachar ulachar eza shos chazar bo. He says, let's say Ruvain hires Shimon, okay, and a few hours after that, Ruvain cancels. He says, the moment Ruvain hired Shimon, he had another place where he could have worked, but because he committed to work for Ruvain, he had to cancel all other opportunities. Ve'ata ein lahem hamakom, and now they don't have any other place where they can hire themselves. Areza kedavar ha'avod, v'chayev ha'balabayis l'shalehim schar midin garmi. So the balabayis would have to pay them for whatever causative damage he's caused them to lose out on a job. Ve'ein ze'inyan l'mevatel kiso shel chavero de poter. He says, and this is exactly what we saw in Rav Sharaga, that this is not comparable to when you cause someone a financial loss indirectly. He says, there you're potter, the esek haguf shiny, because when it comes to matters of employment, we're even more machmer. So let's say I indirectly cause a loss to your property, okay? Then in certain circumstances, I cannot be taken to Beis Din for that. It may be midine shamayim, I'll be chayev, but not midine adam. But when it comes to employment issues, the halacha is more in favor of the employee than it is in issues of property damage. The only leniency that we have on the employer who canceled an employee is that he doesn't have to pay him his full wage. All he has to do is pay him a certain amount per hour that a person would be willing to take to not have to work. Because and if, let's say, they could have gotten another job, but that other job was far less paying than the job that they have now, so he has to make up what they could have made, but it's again not the same amount. The imotzi malacha elashaya keveda. Let's see. Pachas mi elashini skam pachas. The imotzi malacha elashihi keveda mimashu huskru etzlo. Va'az hayichom lahasig malacha kazusha etzlo. Yesh omrim shemechuyavim lahaskirat atzmam imosifim schar ba'ad kevedusa. O shezeh harishon omer ani osif lachem ba'ad kevedusa. He says if they could find other work, and through the cancellation they have to go to that other job, but it's a much more difficult job. It requires much more exertion. And so yesh omrim shemechuyavim lahaskirat atzmam im mosifim schar ba'ad kevedusa. Then they would have, I'm just trying to think, what is he saying? Okay. So in the first case, what he's saying is that if I cancel you, and you can still hire yourself out, but you will be getting less. In other words, if I hire you for the day, you're going to get 100. I cancel you, and you can still find another job, but you're only going to be getting $80 a day for that job. I have to make up the amount, the difference. I have to give you $20. Furthermore, if they could find other work, but it's more difficult work, and yesh omrim shemechuyavim lahaskirat atzmam imosifim schar ba'ad kevedusa o shezeh harishon omer ani mosif lachem ba'ad kevedusa. Some say it sounds like what he's saying is that the guy who canceled on them would have to pay them more because they're working harder. The yesh omrim sheyicholim lomar ein ritzonenu lasot melacha keveda afilu b'tosefet schar v'yishalim hem kapol bato. And some say no. Some say that they have a right to say the only other job that we can take requires much more exertion. We're not prepared to do that. So just pay us like a pole bottle. And you don't get off by just paying us a little bit more for the little bit of extra exertion that we're going to be working. And then Venira Iker Kedea Rishona, and it seems like the first opinion is more correct. V'im b'shash shesachron lo haya lehem makom acher lahaskir et atzmam, pater b'chol inyan. If, however, when he hired them, they didn't have any other job opportunities, and then he cancels, he doesn't have to pay them at all. That's the case of we were talking about with the babysitter. With the babysitter, it depends. If she has multiple opportunities and she commits herself to this person who then cancels on her, then she's entitled to be compensated. But if there were no other people lining up to hire her, so then she doesn't have to pay her. And that still doesn't seem fair, like we mentioned yesterday. Ve'ima poelim omrim shahaya lahem makom acher v'hu machimo sham v'hu machish otam. Let's say there's a dispute on what the reality is. Let's say the workers say, we had another job that we could have taken, but you hired us, so we backed away from that. Now pay us. And the Balabayas says, you didn't have any other job to take. You're just scamming me. So ala poelim lahavi raya kedin motzi mechaverim. So then the workers have to bring proof. They would have to get an affidavit from the other person who was prepared to hire them in order to be able to extract cash.
It's a little unfair that they're the ones to get.
The burden of proof is on them. But you know what? But that's the general rule of anytime you want to extract cash from someone, you want to make someone pay, you have to bring proof that they owe you the money. So they're not just, you can't just take their word for it, because what worker is not gonna say, I could have worked somewhere else. You could have worked somewhere else. You unskilled laborer, where the job market is so poor right now, and people are chalashing to get a job. In other words, that's the attitude of the employer. I don't believe that you could have gotten another job elsewhere. I was doing you a chesed by hiring you. The fact that I canceled until I didn't hire. Right. V'imlo heviu raya nishba habalabayis hesis v'niftar. And if they can't bring proof, then the balabayis can be forced to take an oath and be exempt. Now, how can he take an oath if he doesn't know? I don't know.
What's the oath for? That he doesn't want them anymore?
No, he didn't have any.
What is the oath for? What's the oath for? He can't make an oath on the fact that they didn't have another job.
But you really don't know.
Or the person who wants the mitzvah verify that they have to make sure that they had a job offer.
No, he says nishba al balabayas. So I'm not sure what the Aruch HaShulchan is saying. Why should the balabayas have to take an oath? What is he going to swear on? That yeah. What is he going to swear about?
He can swear at you.
Probably the employee.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand. Venera de
Rabbi.
Yes.
Maybe you can swear that something came up that he didn't need them anymore.
It could be that that's what he would have to swear. But the fact is that if he has a right to cancel the job, even if the circumstances didn't change, he has a right to cancel. But he could, maybe this is to avoid, maybe what you're saying, Shmuel, this is to avoid him being called a mechusar amana. In other words, we can call you a mechusar amana to your face. We can say Plony acts in bad faith. Don't work for this guy. And he wants to avoid the bad reputation. So he can say, maybe this is what Shmuel's saying, that maybe if he takes this shvua, that circumstances did legitimately change and I really can't have this job done right now. So then if he does that, the Beis Din will let him off and will not call him a mechusar amana. Okay. It seems also that if workers cancel a job, they would have to pay the balabayas if he incurs loss through their cancellation. And let's say they say to him, well, you could have always hired someone else. He has to bring, the burden of proof is now on the employer to say, no, look at all the loss that I incurred because of your last minute cancellation. He'll have to bring proof to all of the costs that he incurred, the lawyers and the loss of a day of work, etc., that costs money. And if he can't bring proof, then all of the workers have to do is take an oath, and they can be exempt. And only one of the workers would have to take an oath. And he says, and that's because it's very uncommon for an employer to lose money based on the cancellation of an employee, which is not really so. I mean, if a babysitter cancels at the last minute,
You're in trouble.
yeah, sometimes you can really be in serious trouble. We'll have to hold it here. Sorry about the slow start. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. We will be resuming, on a week from Tuesday. So we're off. All of next week we're off.
July the 8th.
The 9th is Tuesday. So we're back on July 9th. I'll send out a WhatsApp just to remind us all. And have a great Shabbos and a great week.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.